We will recognize the gentlelady from South Dakota, Ms. Noem.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And Chief Tidwell, it's good to see you today. Thank you for coming. I have a couple of questions I wanted to visit with you about, but one of them is regarding grazing permits. As you know, some of the responsibilities of the Forest Service is to maintain and manage our national grasslands as well. And you do that in cooperation with many of our producers who are having trouble with grazing permits because they're trying to go out there and maintain existing structures. It may be to water their cattle, fences that currently exist. And apparently with this administration there's been a change. If they're going to disturb any kind of soil, they're facing some challenges in actually doing that work to make sure that that maintenance can happen. I'm wondering if you'll help me with this. This is a situation that didn't exist previously. It's really challenging for them to go out and graze their cattle, get water to them when the Forest Service is blocking any kind of maintenance to those structures.
Congresswoman, I'll need to meet with you to get a little more information on this. You know, grazing is part of multiple use, and I think our record's very strong that doing everything we can to be able to maintain that. And so, and we want the ranchers to maintain their improvements. I mean, the more water developments that we have, the more options we have, less impact. And so, I'll need to follow up with you and get a little more information so I can address that issue for you.
Yeah, let's do that. I know specifically when it comes to disturbing the soil. So if it's putting a fence in, repairing a fence, fixing a water system where they may need to put a new pipe in the ground, that's where they're running into the problem. So I appreciate your effort to help me on that. Second thing I want to talk about is the mountain pine beetle response project that we have in the Black Hills, which I feel like is very needed and necessary, and I want to thank you for your support. Secretary Vilsack recently came out and said due to sequestration there was going to be a reduction in board feet harvested, 420 million board feet reduction in timber outputs. And I was wondering, were you consulted on that number when it was put forward, on what the reduction would be?
That number is just, it's produced with a 5% reduction in that we, it costs us about $65 a thousand to put up a sale. And so you just factor that across, and that's what it comes up to be, that level of reduction. The other thing I need to stress on that is that 50% of our budget that we get each year is committed to dealing with ongoing timber sale contracts or with personal use for folks that want to be able to have access to firewood and some fixed cost. So you have 50% of the budget that's available for preparing the next year's work or getting the contracts out, you know, late this year. So 5% of that 50 is really a 10% reduction. And so those are the things that are factored into that number. The other thing I want to stress is that, you know, our goal of getting to 3 billion board feet with a 20% reduction, improvement, to 20% increase by 2014, that's a stretch goal. You know, we're budgeted for 2.4 billion. But we've made the commitment through some of the efficiencies that you've been so supportive of. I believe we can get to that 3 billion.
Can you use carryover funds?
I'll tell you, I'm going to use every flexibility I have to be able to continue for us to be able to move forward. But it does result in 5% less funds, and I can use the Black Hills Forest as a good example. 5% of our forest products is about $17 million. You know the difference. If we can send an extra $2 million to the Black Hills, what we can get done with that. So that's the challenge that we have, is to be able to work with this, to minimize the impacts, and still be able to go forward and get the work done. And I just want to be on record to thank you for your support for the work that's going on in the Black Hills, and especially from the state of Dakota, South Dakota. To me, that's a model of really what we want to get done.
Is that something you think could go nationwide?
That's what we're moving forward with. The idea that if they can do it on the Black Hills, to have one EIS to cover 248,000 acres so that we can get in there and do the work we need to maintain the forest health, we ought to be able to do that everywhere.
Okay.
But it takes somebody to lead out. It takes support from people like yourself to be able to encourage our folks to be able to take that risk. And we're really excited now to be able to move forward with that decision.
Thank you. One more thing I want to touch on while I have 20 seconds left. I want to thank you for your investigation into the collapse of our sheep industry that we've seen in South Dakota and the prices. So I appreciate you pursuing that for us. I know in Idaho, a recent court decision maintained and ordered forest management decisions to protect some of the bighorn sheep habitat, and that is impacting their domestic sheep industry as well. Now, is that something that's going to stay isolated to Idaho? We're not going to look at that kind of a decision being spread nationwide and impacting our sheep industries across the country, will we?
Well, we look at every situation, separately. We've also, in the state of Wyoming, have had a different outcome from how we've been able to work with the state there in Wyoming to address the same problem. So I think there's different solutions, to this problem of being able to find a way so that domestic sheep grazing can continue, along with maintaining our bighorn sheep. I mean, there's a lot of folks who like the bighorn sheep, whether to hunt or just go out and look at them. But we got to find a way to be able to do both. And I think from what we've been able to work out in the state of Wyoming is maybe a better approach than where we ended up in Idaho. But we still want to move forward in Idaho to be able to do everything we can to maintain our sheep industry.
Thank you. Thank you.
I thank the gentlelady. Now it's my honor to recognize